Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at a projector that doesn't cost all that much money and actually surprised me by its image quality and performance, sort of. This is the Alfawise X 3200, and right now this sells for $179 on GearBest.com. The price may vary depending on when you see this video. This one includes a built-in Android TV box inside as well, so you can use the projector standalone or you can plug stuff into it. And we'll take a look at its Android performance here in just a second, as well as its overall image quality. But I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that this did come in free of charge from GearBest.com. However, all the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Nobody is paying for this review, and no one has reviewed this content before it was uploaded. So let's take a closer look at the hardware, and then we'll plug it in and see how it performs. As I mentioned, this is $179, so not all that expensive. And they also make one for $139, same projector, but no Android computer built in. That's the one I recommend you go with, because the Android computer in here, as you'll see, is not great, and you could probably do better bringing in your own box that you could probably get for the difference in price between the smart version and the dumb version of this projector. Another thing I like to remind people about when you buy one of these off-name brands from GearBest is that you're buying at your own risk to some degree. If you get one and it's not right initially, I'm sure GearBest will work through it with you from a customer service perspective, but I would not expect to get any support from Alfawise itself. And in fact, this projector showed up with a pretty significant blemish that should have been caught in quality control. You can see this little spot here on the lens, and this is visible when things are projected through that lens all the time. So I've got this big spot here you can see moving around when I am projecting on a screen, and it's a problem. I don't know if it's a scratch inside or what, but the only resolution here is probably to take it apart and risk damaging the projector. So just keep in mind, you're buying this at your own risk. The Android computer inside of this thing is running Android 6 and has not been updated since August of 2016. There are no updates to speak of for this thing. So again, walking security risk here, and again, just be careful about your expectations on this one. But I was surprised, blemishes aside, by the image quality and brightness of the unit here. They rated at 3200 lumens, and I didn't have a means of measuring that to verify it, but I can tell you it was pretty bright looking at it. The lamp inside is an LED lamp. You can't adjust the lamp brightness, although they allow you to adjust the overall brightness and tone of the image on the on-screen menu here. And I found that if I have a couple of lights on in a room, it's visible and usable, but of course it looks better when you get the blinds drawn and really get the room as dark as possible. But even in a moderately lit room, it worked out okay for me. So that was pretty impressive. Again, you'll see some image quality out of this in a second. A bunch of inputs on it as well. So of course you have the Android computer built in, but you also have two HDMI inputs. You can plug in VGA. There's a TV adapter here. I'm not sure what kind of plug this is. This is not something we use in the United States, but perhaps in other markets there are TV plugs that look this way. I thought it might have been a BNC connector, but it doesn't look like that either. So maybe some of you can chime in on what that is. You have component input here along with RCA inputs, so you could plug in your Nintendo or some other old game console into this thing in addition to your HDMI stuff. These two USB ports are used with the Android computer, and we were able to plug in a keyboard trackpad combo as well as some external storage, and all of that worked fine. Power supply is built in. You plug it in right over there. Now, the projector itself is only 1280 by 800, so although they say it will go up to 4K, it is going to be down converting all of the inputs into this thing to that 1280 by 800 resolution. So do not expect super high def quality out of this, but I think it's good enough for the price point, especially if you're looking for something cheap to have for an outdoor movie night or something. This dial here is the focus dial as my camera goes out of focus, so you can focus the image this way. This dial here is the Keystone, because what will happen, of course, is if you're trying to prop the image up a little bit, the image gets slanted, and this is a manual Keystone adjustment to get the image aligned properly. It does make some clunking noises here as you're moving it around. So no automatic Keystone adjustment, no automatic focus, and no zoom. You've got to zoom with your feet with this one. There's also no stands on this to prop it up, so you will be looking for reams of paper and phone books and all of that kind of stuff to get it propped up on your desk. There's also a couple of controls here on the top. These are just for navigating the Android interface or the interface itself. If you want to, I'll flip it over here. Switch sources, for example, you hit the source button here to switch between all those different sources on the back. Your image controls are set with this dial right there. And they also packed in a remote control in the box as well for using both the Android system as well as some of the on-screen displays, and the IR receiver for that remote is right here at the top. So overall, a pretty nicely configured projector, and as you'll see in a minute, also somewhat decent image quality for the price. So let me go hook this thing up. I'm going to turn the room lights down so we can get a good look at it, and I'll show you what it can do. So I've got the projector now up and running, and it looks pretty close to what I'm seeing in the room right now. So just so you know, I've got the room lights off over there. There is some ambient light coming in from the windows, and this is pretty close to what I am seeing. So again, the darker you get the room, the better off you're going to be. Now, when you first boot it up, this is what you're going to see. They've got their own custom Android launcher on this thing, again, running Android 6. It has an S905X processor, but only a gig of RAM and 8 gigabytes of storage. So it is a little limited in what it can do, and you'll see some of those limitations here now. So let's go over to YouTube first and check out how that runs on here. We'll load that up, and you can see here that spot that I mentioned is very visible when you've got something white like this on screen. So we'll click on this CES dispatch that I posted while I was away, and you can see how quickly everything comes up. Now, this is running with the tablet version of Android. It doesn't know that it's on a TV-based device, so there are some interface gotchas that you might run into, and if you've ever played with one of those cheap Android boxes, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about here. So the video quality is okay. Again, we're downscaling to 1280 by 800. If we did have a frame counter up on here, we'll probably be seeing some dropped frames along the way here. So the Android system built into this thing really isn't all that effective, and not something, again, that I'm going to recommend, but you can play the stuff back. It does look a little bit cold right now based on what my camera is picking up. The color does look a little better in real life while you're staring at it. So let's back out of here and maybe pop into Kodi real quick, and we'll take a quick look at its overall image quality. Now, one thing I noticed on here is that the Android system built into it is not powerful enough to drive a Blu-ray MKV file. So we've got this Jellyfish test file, 45 megabits per second, H.264, pretty much what you would get with a Blu-ray MKV, and you can see those skip frames up there at the top really jumping there. We're up to 140 skip frames right now. So again, I'm really going to recommend that you go with the non-Android version of this to get the same image quality that you see here with better performance by using an external box of some kind. But the image quality isn't bad, as you can see here. It's got decent color. It's bright enough, I think, again, if you have the room set to the right ambient light. And I think you could probably get a pretty decent experience out of this for a low price. And I was surprised by how well this does as a gaming projector. I connected up my Nintendo Switch to it with fast RMX, as you can see here. Image quality was great. I was able to maintain a 60 frames per second frame rate, which this game typically runs at. Looks really, really nice on here, and again, I was quite pleased with it. In fact, I was very impressed with just how little motion blur there was when you have fast-moving things on screen. I also connected up my Analog NT Mini, which is that NES clone console that I love. It has the lowest input latency out of all the stuff that I own here, so I like to use that as a test bed for testing input lag and whatnot. And I got a score of 66 milliseconds from the time that I pushed the button to when Mario jumped up there on screen, and that is as good as a much more expensive projector we looked at from BenQ not all that long ago. And I would argue that the image quality on here, insofar as its motion blur is concerned, is better on this really cheap projector than it was on that more expensive one that really wasn't geared to gaming. So there are some benefits here to maybe taking a little bit of a risk on this. And if you're looking to, maybe in the summertime, play some games outside on your garage door or something cool like that, you can do that here with a projector that you can get for about $140. Again, I was very pleased with what we got out of this for the price, minus that blemish issue on it. And you can also use it with a rear projection screen. You can reverse the image for that purpose. There are also some other image controls that you can adjust on it, such as color, temperature, and contrast and whatnot. Not a huge amount of things that you can dive into on this for its overall image quality, but by default, for the price, it's actually pretty decent, and I think you'll have a good experience with it. But again, I do recommend looking at the version of this projector without the Android system built into it. The Android computer inside is really slow. It was having a lot of problems playing back movies. Even streaming services like YouTube and Netflix were seeing a lot of drop frames, and I did not have a good experience with that. GearBest does sell a little TV box called the Tanix TX3, I believe, that I reviewed a couple of weeks ago. I'll put a link to it down below in the video description. That box was about $30 when I got a hold of mine, and I think you could get ahead of the game by buying a cheap Android box to pair up with this thing and save yourself a little bit of money and get better performance all in the process there. So I would probably suggest doing that. One other suggestion with this is that you can see I've got it resting on a ream of paper right now. Even though you do have that Keystone adjustment, so you can prop up the front of it, for example, to get the projected image higher, you do lose some focus at the bottom of the image when you do use that Keystoning feature. So my advice would be prop it up as high as you can, but try to keep the lens flat so that you can get a focused image all the way through. So again, not perfect here, but for 140 bucks, I am not complaining, especially if you are looking for a decent projector just to play some games on a larger screen every once in a while, or maybe watch a movie or something, and you're not coming into this with the expectation of buying yourself a true enthusiast home theater device. I think for the price point here, especially at 140 bucks, you can't go wrong. This is Lon.TV, and that was the Alfawise X3200, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold level supporters, the Black Eyed and Blues Music Hour podcast, Chris Allegretta, Steve Blixt, Stanley Taub, and Kalyan Kumar. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.